The Nintendo Switch is a great little console, especially when it comes to indie games. The Nintendo eShop gets flooded with new indie games on a near weekly basis. Sometimes it's nothing but trash, other times you find something cool and interesting, and sometimes you can find something very odd. During one of my many excursions into the depths of the Nintendo eShop, I found something different, something unlike anything I've ever seen before, something the more that I looked into its dark, terrifying depths, the more I felt it gazing back into my own soul. This unknowable eldritch force I speak of is a small indie game about a chubby blue cat trying to find his parents. Heart Chain Kitty is a 3D indie platformer released on the Switch in the year of our Lord, 2021. Heart Chain Kitty is a collectathon platformer in the vein of Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie. The game follows Kitty, seen here, on his quest to find his parents. And there you go, kids. There's your motivation to run out into the world and collect its many treasures. Like with most platformers, don't go in expecting a grand emotional tale. The story itself is fairly rudimentary. I didn't find any of the dialogue that engaging. And after a little while, I just started slamming the A button to skip through conversations in my playthrough. First, let's address the elephant in the room when talking about this game. You've probably noticed that its presentation is a tad bit odd. Heart Chain Kitty definitely has a unique art style, to say the very least. The thumbnail on the storefront, as well as its main menu screen, has a nice 2D rendition of Kitty, and it's honestly kinda cute. Then you start playing the game, and dear God, that's the same Kitty. I don't even know how to fully describe it. So here it is. Gaze upon the game in its sheer majesty with your own peepers. The character models almost look like they're made out of Play-Doh, but not in a way that feels like it's on purpose. They kinda look like they came out of a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game, after they stared too deep into the abyss and saw what was staring back at them. There are massive chains connecting land masses, sky islands where you fight a sky god, a hippo village, and even a duck-themed level. I honestly like a lot of the weird choices that this game makes, like the weird colored scheme and the kinda offbeat themes for the levels. Just a lot of the time, the game looks, like this. The worlds are often large and vast, and there's even some 2.5D platforming sections that break up the typical 3D platforming. And since I brought up platforming, might as well move on to the gameplay. Like I mentioned before, Heart Chain Kitty is a 3D platformer in the vein of Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, but the game structure itself is a tad bit odd. Like with most games, you get a tutorial, how to jump, how to use its climbing points, the game will introduce you to its collectibles, this game's version of Mario's stars, power hearts, and then the light collectible of the game, coins. Once you finish the tutorial, the village elder will send Kitty on his quest to hunt down a whale that he saw hanging out around the island. Now, you got free reign to explore the island. You can talk to all the characters hanging around the village. You can check out the 2 shops in the village. These shops are spots where you can trade coins for upgrades. And pro gamer strat for anyone who wants to pick this game up. Get the letter first, it'll give you a glide ability. The game will never tell you this. The island itself isn't that big, but it definitely isn't small either. Exactly like how I described mine. The first stop you should make in the game is over to Glass's lab to get the power glove. No, not that one. It'll give you an attack, and give you the ability to unscrew the giant screws dotted around the world. Now you have all the basic mechanics. There's one aspect that I have yet to touch on, and it might be the most important one. How does it actually feel to play? And well, if there's one aspect that a platformer needs to get right, it's the jump. And Kitty's jump feels terrible. It's floaty and odd, never feels quite right. Kitty's attacks feel weird and inconsistent. They never seem to land quite right. The later mechanics like the hamster ball Kitty gets stuck in don't feel good to play in either. The momentum of it feels inconsistent, the jump feels inconsistent, and is just kind of unfun to mess around with. The structure of the game itself is also very odd. At first, when I started playing, I thought the main island was just going to be a hub, and you would just jump to new different levels. that is sort of the case. The game kind of spreads out like a spider web. On that first island, you'll notice that there are giant portals dotted around that'll take you to smaller platforming areas or challenging 2.5D sections. But as you keep going, you open up more smaller hubs just like it with other portals dotted about, and the game ends up being like a bunch of different spider webs connected together. I feel like the game is way too big for its own good. A lot of the larger areas are just kind of unfun to navigate through. There's not a ton to collect, not a ton to see. The smaller, more linear sections of the game are far more interesting to play through. It's more interesting to jump into this small area, grab all the collectibles, see the gimmick of that area, and then move on to the next. If the game cut some of its fat and went with a shorter, tighter, punchier structure, it could have made this game an odd little gem, but instead the game feels bloated and padded for being a small budget title. The game itself isn't painful to play. There's just a lot of rough edges and a lot of smoothing out that needs to be done before I can consider this game to be necessarily fun or enjoyable to play. Originally, when I decided to make a video on this game, it was to tear this game apart for a few laughs. I saw the art style, thought I could make fun of it for upwards of 5 minutes and then move on. But as I kept playing the game, I could see the heart that the creator put into it. The game is developed by a small indie dev who, through my internet sleuthing, looks like a one-man team. They put out a lot of smaller, cheaper games on Steam and the Nintendo eShop, but unlike the ye old Steam asset flip, all the art assets seem to be made by hand and have quite a bit of heart behind them. The further I'd get into the game, I would see a couple new mechanics here and there, like the aforementioned hamster ball or rocket riding. I kept seeing new character models, new enemies, new NPCs, which takes a lot of hard work and dedication for one guy to make, and like I said earlier, the game is fairly large for it being as cheap as it is. And it takes a lot of hard work and dedication for one person to make all that stuff, even if I don't think it came out looking the best. According to the developer's Steam page, this was the first 3D game they've ever made, and I can honestly see some nuggets of gold in there, and I hope that one day they get refined into something great. I may have been harsh in some of my criticisms, but I find a lot more artistic merit in someone taking wild swings and missing than creatively bankrupt NFT games or the corporate annual release from big publishers. But at the same time, I don't feel that bad criticizing this game either, because it's being sold as a professional product alongside of much better games like
It's me, a Mario.
Or even other great indie platformers like A Hat in Time and Demon Turf, and if it's being sold as a professional product, it should be critiqued as one too. This was an odd game to talk about, and I honestly don't know how to end this thing. But if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of my subpar content, and see you in the next one.